I think in your book you also describe this seductive process that he had with all his collaborators, this sort of combination of seduction and manipulation that's behind his filmmaking on so many levels. And then there was also a sort of cat and mouse game, I think, between you and him in a way, over the years in terms of how this book came to life. So why don't we start with that?
I've never met anybody. I mean, I've been writing about the movie business for, I hate to think how long. And I've interviewed, all the major stars of that generation and a lot of the younger ones. And I've never, ever met anyone who was as seductive and charming as Warren Beatty. It's almost scary. I first met Beatty. I was a fan of Beatty growing up. I saw Bonnie and Clyde. And Bonnie and Clyde, it's impossible to overstate the importance of Bonnie and Clyde in changing the direction of American film in 1967 and the late 60s. Bonnie and Clyde kicked off the so-called New Hollywood revolution of the 70s.
You really detail this very well in the book, but he always seems to have some kind of plan about his career. And this is, he'd done television throughout the 50s, but this is his first feature film. And he's got Elia Kazan, the top director at that time. So he sort of has this kind of scheme in mind.
Well, he apparently that was the era of the so-called auteur theory, where Andrew Sarris was pushing certain American directors like John Ford and so forth as great artists. I mean, up to that point, it came from France, and up to that point, studio movies were considered mere entertainment. And the French critics around Cahiers du Cinema, many of whom became famous filmmakers in their own right, Francois Truffaut and Jean-Luc Godard, argued that these directors of American studio films, westerns and horror movies and whatever, were great artists. And so Beatty, coming up in this period and also in the shadow of the method actors, Marlon Brando, James Dean, and Montgomery Clift, actually made a list of the great directors he wanted to work with, and he very consciously went after them.
Now, Shampoo, I was going to start by asking you about sort of the move into politics, and you have this whole involvement with the McGovern campaign and real-life involvement with politics, and there is this very serious side to Beatty. But before I do that, I realize we probably haven't talked enough about sex so far in the discussion, because it's a running theme in the book, and it's something that everybody's fascinated with, and you certainly describe this a lot in your book, and there's this interesting sort of move back and forth between this amazing sex life, but also this sort of private side and very serious side to Beatty. So.
Just in case you're all thinking, that I revel in lurid sex. There was no way of writing about Beatty without writing about his sex life, because he was famous for it. I mean, he was the Don Juan of the last century, and probably this century as well. I mean, this famous number shot around the internet where I tried to figure out how many women he might have slept with. And, sort of Guinness Book of Records inquiring readers want to know sort of thing. And I did it in a kind of tongue-in-cheek way, and it's a very, very much of a ballpark figure. But I came out with this enormous number, like 12,000.
We're going to open it up to questions in just a minute. I'll ask you to talk briefly about three different women: Madonna, Annette Bening, and then a behind-the-scenes woman, Elaine May. I mean, there was a very interesting creative, non-sexual relationship, but a creative relationship that they had. Of course, she directed Ishtar, but they also worked together on other films.
He made Ishtar. Well, Elaine May, is a brilliant writer, and she did a lot of uncredited work on Reds and didn't even ask to be paid. And when Reds was finished, and she also played a big role in post-production, and Beatty would listen to her as he listened to almost nobody else. Madonna, people always say about Annette Bening, ask me, why Annette? It could have been Julie Christie, it could have been Diane Keaton. Madonna laid the groundwork. She was quite a bit younger than Beatty. He went out with her while he was making Dick Tracy. A lot of people felt it was a quote-unquote demographic romance, because Beatty by that time was getting on, and a lot of the younger people didn't know who he was, whereas Madonna had this huge following. She was enormous at the time. You know, he does have a romantic streak. He did always want to settle down, and Annette, you know, I think Madonna, as I said, dramatized certain facts of life to him, and then Annette came along, and they, you know, and she's a great actress, as you could see, it was evident in the clip, and she's again that way a little bit with him in real life. She doesn't take any nonsense from him. Thank you, Catherine, and thank everybody.
Okay, thanks a lot.
David, thank you, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.